Good day, peoples. So I've got two cards for CheapAz round 2, the GTX560 comp. The first card we're going to go through is Inno 3D card. I'm not entirely sure which one, but it does look very reference. Standard GF114 core with a Gigabyte of VRAM. Got lucky with Samsung eDie, the HWBot bin, which according to the guys on the HWBot Discord seems to be the best ones to have, especially for ambient. Sometimes the cold scaling does get a little bit weird. As you can see here, this is the very bad VRM version. So it's a 3-phase. Each phase is 2 MDU2654 MOSFETs and 1 MDU2655s for vCore, and then on the memory rail we have 2 MDU2655s and 1 MDU2657. I couldn't find a lot of information on any of these MOSFETs, although they are made by Chip Semiconductor as far as I could find out. On the backside, in the lower left corner, is the VRM controller, the onsemi NCP5388, as on most of the reference cards. It's not the greatest one to have, because there was some issues with the volt modding not being as easy, but I haven't specifically researched to find out what to do, what not to do. On taking a closer look on the VRM controller, you can see that there are some of the components completely straight on their pads, and the whole left quarter of the card is darkened, which also happens to be right under the vCore VRM. So I'm worried that the card picked up some heat damage at some point, or that the VRMs got quite hot, which isn't a good sign for an overclocking competition. But it's likely because I got it from the seller with the Accelero Twin Turbo 3 without any VRM cooling. It was just the heatsink. Nothing on the VRAM, nothing on the VRM. This card is probably not going to be the best one in the competition. So I was like, okay, let's try and de-lead it. It was my first attempt at a de-lead. So I got some utility knife blades. I came in from the top left corner. First I tested all 4 corners, just to try and see, does this come off easily? Because some of the Fermi cards de-lid quite easily, and where others are quite a significant struggle. I ended up coming in from the top left of the chip. As you can kind of see, there is some damage to the IHS, but nothing major. So at first I was just pushing on the back of the blade with my fingers, and then it did slide in a little bit, but then it hooked completely and I had no further way to move it. I took a screwdriver with just a small socket head and just pushed on the back of the utility blade, and that it popped right in underneath the IHS, and it lifted it off quite quickly with quite a bit of force, but not too much. Look, I wouldn't recommend it because I think I might have gotten close to a couple of the smaller SMDs around the core, but I didn't take anything off. We'll see how it goes, but I don't have too high hopes for this card. The second card is probably the worst PCB Gigabyte made for the 560s because it's their 460 3-phase. But it is what it is. Once again, standard GF114 with, again, Samsung eDie HWBot. Here at least the VRM is cooled from the factory with a little heatsink. So following without the heatsink, we have different components this time. We have each phase made out of 2 onsemi 4935N MOSFETs and a single onsemi 4921N. For the memory rail, 1 phase, same components. These aren't great MOSFETs. They're quite low spec, so I will have to keep them cool if I'm planning on pushing significant volts. Not that I'm planning on pushing too many. Once again, on the back of the card, in the lower left, we have the onsemi NCP5388, which isn't ideal, explained previously. So that's both of the cards. I don't plan on picking up another one, although there was one of the kind individuals in the HWBot Discord that did offer to send me Asus DCU2. Yes, there are a good couple of videos for this competition already being released by other content creators. I would suggest the video by Soyo where he goes over the rules for the competition, what the competition's about, and then which which cards are that you should look out for, which would be good to use for the competition, and then which cards to avoid. Tagg also has a series of videos on enabling the PCIe 2.0 mod if you're running on Z690 or Z790, as well as his own video where he starts with a dead EVGA superclocked GTX560 if I remember correctly. I'll link the videos in the description below. If you watched Soyo's video, you'll see that he did say the 4-phase is probably the lowest card you'd want to buy, and even then you'd want to avoid those. And here I am with the 2 3-phase cards. So I probably won't be going down any further than ambient water cooling, and my ambient is quite high at the moment. So due to the high ambience, I'm not really planning on pushing too much voltage to these cards, especially with them being 3-phase, and probably figure out some active cooling method for the VRMs. I do have little heat sinks from like robotic projects and things like that, but fortunately for this CheapAz, I at least do have cards. Even though they are some of the worst PCB revisions, I at least have 2 cards for this round of CheapAz, which is a improvement from at the beginning of this year for the 260, where my 260 would die on driver load, and for the 6850s I couldn't find one at all locally, and shipping to here is just too expensive to make it worthwhile. Even though these cards are 3-phase, there's also the possibility of doing an e-power for some people that have the skills and the tools. I am not one of those people with the skills or the tools. As part of this round of the competition, the rules have been set at maximum 4 cores and 4 threads at 4.5 GHz. So theoretically you could take a 13900 KS, disable it all the way down, but I likely won't be taking my 13700K, just because PCIe 2.0 mod required for Z690 and Z790 motherboards. Yeah, I do have an AM4 system that I could use, or there is the possibility of me borrowing back my 4790K from my father. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you have a good competition, and I hope you have a good day. Cheers.